B. EPA. Disbanded. The EPA is out to protect the chemical companies and silence and impede any investigating and/or concerned citizen. Independent investigators and researchers using their own private capital stand no chance against the enormous resources of the chemical giants or the law firms and government agencies protecting them, often because of being invested in them and/or receiving contributions from them. D. PHMC immediate reforms. 1. Military. The only way a peaceful nation can exist on a planet without a military is if there are no other foreign nations. If a nation, no matter its power, disbands its military in a world with separate nations, even if they are all at peace, it leaves the door wide open for a malignant power to rapidly rise up and lash out against these defenseless nations. It is unwise to assume that man lives in a perfect heaven, and that peace can exist unthreatened. The earth and man are imperfect by nature, and thus the peace they achieve will be likewise. Perfection exists only in archetypes such as quote-unquote heaven. Therefore, the individualist strives for the highest ideal, yet maintains realism, understanding the necessity of a military for defense against the unpredictable malice of man. Even within a peaceful nation with a strictly defensive military, a war can be started simply by the greed of man. The need suppliers love war. Within it, or in preparation for it, armaments and munitions of all types call for an increase in the mining of metals and explosive minerals, skyrocketing the manufacturing of all things from tanks, radios, to clothing and all other war merchandise. For such profitable reasons, they purposely start wars, without the care of the loss of lives while their profits are soaring. In war, these material things are twice as expensive, yet rapidly destroyed, and thus they need rapidly replaced. Therefore, for them, war is a perpetual gold mine of consumption and waste. Wastes of lives, energy, and resources for the high profit of the few, who are always eager for another war. Each new territory gained is exploited for its resources, with its men recruited to do battle in the next money-making scheme. All the while, the most extreme profit is funneled to the international bankers who are financing all sides. It is for this reason that only populace-owned facilities may create war machines or supplies, solely at the vote of the entire populace. No private party will start a war to initiate this cycle of waste for private profit at the expense of the taxpayers, dollars, and lives of the people. For the same reasoning, all populist meetings, especially in times of war, are broadcast live and immediately made available at Lafkey. The individualistic union is strictly neutral and claims no allies, for allies have exterior interests. Its military force is constantly a passive defense. Too often the word defense is used for an active attacking force far from the U.S. borders. The individualistic union only defends when a force threatens its borders, and it never fights off of its own land or sends its people from theirs. Its force will never be more than 500 miles off of their coast. The individualistic armed forces remain the same in organization. However, its forces are now made up of all able citizens, with 1% of the population being full-time professional soldiers. Upon high school graduation, all individuals serve a mandatory 2 years in the Populus militia, with a 3-month boot camp modeled and operated by the United States Marine Corps. They are taught how to defend themselves, as well as their friends, loved ones, homes, and locality, thus the nation. They are taught hand-to-hand combat, firearms, war strategy, and given general understanding of the divisions of the armed forces. The second 3-month period shall be instruction in the detailed defense of the homestead and the locality, as well as familiarization with the war machines of each armed force. In this military protection of the homestead, they are shown the value of civilization and social cooperation as opposed to the savagery of dealing with nature on one's own. Each student is made to face the wilderness with the bare essentials, to prove an understanding of the survivalist techniques which they were taught, consequently granting the students clear sight to the appreciation of a society and the ease with which cooperation of mankind, a society, makes life. With this understood, they will know why it is their duty to protect such a society, so long as that nation maintained a doctrine of liberty. Finally, the infamous Crucible finishes their 6 months basic training. Upon successful completion of the Crucible, they are given an M1 carbine rifle, engraved with their name and Omnis Hominis aut libere sunt aut serve for graduation, theirs to keep for the defense of their homestead. They are then allowed to pick a military specialization at which they will work on for the remaining 18 months under their chosen branch of service. The next 6 months will then be instruction on the selected specialization, as well as instruction as to the proceedings around a locality, such as a passive policing, labor forces, and methods of regular training upon returning to civilian life. They are then paid for their last 12 months, approximately $500 per week, as they practice their duty within the Union. The knowledge and teaching in the first 12-month period shall be their pay for the first half of their military training, and the M1 being a reminder of such. Concluding their 24 months of service, they may choose to return home as a reservist or become a professional soldier. All such citizens returning home are considered members of the Populus Defenders until the age of 50. Each entire local block rehearses once every 2 months with their fellow neighborhood and is visited twice per year by an overseeing general to keep all drills, skills, knowledge, and awareness at the highest possible level of mastery. This very challenging visit includes a standardized test which each division must pass or face being sent back for 1 week to basic training for their deficiency. All Populus defenders are required to train at local facilities 1 weekend every 3 weeks, totaling 17 weekends per year until the age of 30. Thereafter, 1 weekend every 6 weeks up to the age of 35, and then 1 weekend every 2 months up to the age of 45. Thus, those from 35 to 45 need only train at the neighborhood drills. After the age of 45, there is no required training until the age of 50 when one becomes officially retired from the militia. Wardens reserve the right to detain unfit reservists for a health regime at any time during the training sessions. Furthermore, there is no restriction to train at these sessions more often than required. Each locality is divided by homestead and rank of the citizens composing that locality. If the highest ranks are numerous, one individual is chosen to be the block captain. The training drills shall focus mostly on the defense of their particular locality, but are not limited to such. The organization and efficiency of the alert of their locality and preparation for its defense will be flawless, down to the execution of all strategic maneuvers. Besides the reasons already mentioned, and those that are obvious, the individualist turns practically its entire adult population into this active reserve, or retired soldiers, for the following reasons. Government, militaries, can become the power of an entity separate from the people and thus suppress the people. Else they can become a power in and of themselves and overthrow the orderly rule to initiate a tyranny. Today's militaries are the tools of corporation, causing war for material wealth, ownership, and control. In the past, they were the tools of the church, causing wars for spiritual ownership and control. And before that, they were tools of singular rulers, kings, emperors, and pharaohs for their own ambitions in all of the above. The individualistic military shall be a tool of the people for their security in all of the above. It must be composed wholly of the people, bar none. The instant exclusions are made, a division takes root, and will be grown into exactly what exists today. 2 groups, civilian and soldier, ignorant of each other, who could be turned against one another. Separation in all of its forms is observed with a watchful eye by the individualists. Unity, harmony, cannot have separation, else it is not one. Separation immediately causes contending forces. With a common experience, a camaraderie is formed, strengthening the union. The wealthy and the poor, the man and woman, all in the same trench, under the same stress. All illusions of separation are shattered as each sees each other as fellow humans upon earth to cooperate together to survive. With all people experienced as soldiers, each one knows the inner workings of the military and the reason for its necessity to protect the society they love in the event of malice. The present-day U.S. military is 1,427,000 soldiers, or 0.47% of the population. About 13% of the U.S. is elderly, about 39 million people. 18% is of age 50 to 65. 34% are children, and 2% are mentally retarded and or criminals. Some believe it is the entire nation. Leaving 33% of the population to contribute to reserve military duty. Whether male or female, mother with child, disabled or obese, there is a small contribution from everyone, as it is their duty to be an active part of the society and assist its protection and welfare. Only a few will be excused from local reserve training, pregnant females and the disabled, yet they must still report and be given suitable light duties and practical knowledge tests. Approximately 2% of the total populace, or 6,020,000, are 17 to 18 years old and will be active in their military induction. Possibly an additional 1% will voluntarily remain in active service, becoming professional soldiers. Thus, 30% of the individualist population is a standing reserve army, with 3% being active soldiers. Additionally, approximately 1/3 of the reserves will be dwelling in fortified strategic homestead structures, a common individualistic energy-efficient home building. See page 145. This is an active military increase of over 600%. However, unlike the military of the old world, the might is composed of the people, thus controlled by the people, not by separate interests. This possession of all the citizens with military knowledge and weaponry negates any possibility of authoritarian attempts of control, whether by corporations, political corruption, or military coup. It causes neighbors to have elevated respect for one another and a common foundation, thus closer bonds. Additionally, it makes for a much safer home, locality, and nation from foreign invasion, as well as criminals, being that all potential criminals will be made into cooperative citizens by the bonds of camaraderie formed with their mandatory 2-year training, and that all potential victims are now well armed and well trained. With this trained populace, there is thus no need for a police force. The active militia members of that locality will be assigned for patrol of their locality. These citizen police stop law being used as a control force, as all will be familiar with the law, from its creation to its execution, including documentation and prosecution. Policing duty is never more than a 2-year period, unless volunteered for longer service in the position, and accepted by local populace vote. This method deters the corruption of police. Police with over 4 years' experience may request to become local wardens. Over 8 years of experience is required to be a senior warden. The word warden was chosen to remind them of passive policing, to ward off malice, not to police the citizens.